Emily and David got together pretty quickly. The reason was that David broke his vow of celibacy not long after leaving the monastery. Well, since he had already left the monastic life, it couldn't really be called breaking a vow. A more appropriate way to describe it would be, when two souls meet, it's a moment that outshines 1,000 ordinary days. Just as the saying goes, happiness in life is all about coming back to where your heart belongs, and everything in the world follows the rhythm of fate. Ever since accepting his decision to leave the monastery willingly, David had been living a carefree life. Sometimes, when he thought about his years in the monastery, it felt like a distant memory, a thing of the past. It was like when he used to doze off during his evening meditation in the monastery, reminiscing about his wild youth. Everything was just an experience, and his relationship with Emily was like an inevitable entanglement in this world, since it was impossible to escape or end. They decided to follow their hearts and confirm their relationship. David still felt a bit disgusted with himself for breaking the vow of celibacy right after leaving the monastery. The same kind of disgust he once had towards his friend Tom, but, well, Emily was just too charming. He had recited the calming mantras over and over again, but still couldn't resist her. Oh no. Goodness gracious, Emily didn't think of herself as a seductress. She was just a divorced woman. How could she have the charm of a mythical seductress? But as a divorced woman, she was really happy to have finally found a man she liked. She didn't care about his past at all and just wanted to be with him as soon as possible. Well, on the night Emily got David, she really felt like she had turned into a seductress and devoured David completely. But in the middle of the night, David took control. Emily was so surprised by David's stamina that she raised her eyebrows and asked, "David, did you really eat only vegetables during those years in the monastery?" David really felt sorry for the Buddha. The only excuse he could come up with was he had been suppressing his feelings for too long. Some people are just not destined to be free from worldly desires. Even after years of monastic life, once they break their vows, they can't control themselves. However, since he was a former monk who had left the monastery, David gradually learned to be more self-controlled and adapted to his new life. This included his diet. He would have a vegetarian meal one day and a meal with a bit of meat the next. Fortunately, Emily understood him very well. She even accompanied David in eating this way. As a result, she lost a few pounds, and her figure became even more graceful. Emily had a slender yet curvy figure. Changing from a total meat lover to a semi-meat lover not only made her body look better but also improved her skin. Sometimes, when she looked at herself in the mirror, she thought she looked so fresh and charming, she could almost be considered a female seductress. "David, am I your female seductress?" One day, while they were sitting on the couch watching a reality show, Emily fed David a piece of cut honeydew and asked with a smile. "No." David ate the honeydew and replied lazily, leaning on the couch. After a pause, he added, "Emily, don't underestimate yourself. You're definitely not a seductress. You're a femme fatale." Emily sat on David's lap and was about to shake him when David held her shoulders. He looked helpless yet content, with a calm and open-hearted smile. "Look. You're a real handful of a femme fatale." Emily really wanted to take a bite of David. Emily's parents found out that she had a boyfriend, without even calling in advance. They drove from their small town to the city where Emily lived and waited for her at the apartment complex where she lived. They didn't wait in vain. Instead of their daughter, they met a handsome and kind-looking man. He even seemed a bit familiar, as if they had seen him somewhere before. "Hello, Uncle and Aunt. My name is David." "Hello. Hello. Are you the David that our Emily always talks about?" Emily's mother asked excitedly. Reaching out to hold David's hand tightly, David smiled gently. "I think so." David met his future in-laws in advance. At noon that day, he took them to a nearby restaurant and ordered several delicate vegetarian dishes. Emily's mother was more and more satisfied with David. She had never been this satisfied with Emily's ex-husband. On the other hand, as soon as Emily received the news from the startup park, she rushed over almost at in the restaurant. David was already chatting with Emily's parents. When Emily entered, she saw a harmonious scene. Her mother was smiling from ear to ear, and her father also had a satisfied smile on his face. Well, when it came to pleasing the elderly, probably no one was better than David. After all, his previous clients were mostly elderly people. "David, what did you do before?" Emily's mother asked, trying to find out more about him. Even though she liked him, she still had to ask some common questions. Mom, Emily immediately became nervous, afraid that David would mention his past as a monk. She was about to stop him. David answered by himself. I did some research on religious literature. His tone was natural, calm, without any hint of arrogance. Amazing. Emily's mother almost slapped the table in excitement. Emily's father also glanced at his daughter this time. She had a good taste. Their daughter had found a man who did research. Emily. She didn't expect that being a monk could be described so impressively. What about your parents? My father is in business. And my mother has passed away. Well, great. No mother-in-law to worry about. What do you usually like to do? David suddenly stopped. Emily's heart tightened because even though David had left the monastery, he still meditated and chanted scriptures for an hour every day. His favorite thing to do was to meditate. I have rather boring hobbies. I usually just stay at home. Sometimes, I just meditate by myself. Meditate? What was that? Emily's parents didn't quite understand. But since he was doing research, especially in religious studies, meditation seemed even more profound. Anyway, Emily's parents liked David more and more. His dignified manner and handsome features made them feel really, as if they had seen him somewhere before, but they just couldn't remember that day. Emily's mother found an excuse to get David's birth date and planned to find a fortune teller to calculate their compatibility after going back. After what happened with Emily's ex-husband, she was more cautious about choosing a fortune teller. After asking many people, someone recommended a fortune teller named Master John, who used to be a monk. Master John is really good. He's accurate and his fees are reasonable. If he meets someone he feels connected to, he might even give a discount. But I heard he's left the monastic life. It's a bit hard to find him now. Emily's mother was so disappointed that she called Emily to talk about it. Emily was silent for a while and then said to her mother, Mom, don't worry about it. I happen to know a fortune teller too. Give me the birth dates, and I'll calculate it for you. That night, a piece of paper with their 2 birth dates was placed in front of David. He calculated carefully and wrote 2 words, perfect match. It was midsummer in July, and the sun was scorching hot. 1 week. Tom and his wife went on a business trip to the UK for a week and left their daughter Lily with her grandparents in the city. One day, Lily was bored and accidentally connected a video call to David while playing with her iPad. In the afternoon, David was sitting cross-legged on a bamboo mat, meditating to aid digestion. His phone rang, and Lily's avatar was flashing. He answered the phone and greeted Lily with a smile. Hi, Lily. How are you? Lily was supposed to call her dad, but when she saw David's face, she just giggled and didn't say she had dialed the wrong number. When she heard David greet her, she grinned even wider. Hi, Uncle David. I'm fine. David guessed that Lily had probably made a mistake with the video call, but he still wanted to talk to the cute little girl. He held the phone in one hand, tucked his knees in a bit, and half supported himself on the mat with his right hand. He chatted with Lily with a gentle smile. For example, he asked if she had eaten lunch, and what she had eaten, and why she wasn't taking a nap. Was she secretly making a video call? From an adult's perspective, chatting with a child could be very boring. But David was chatting with great enthusiasm and patience. Emily, who was listening beside him, thought it was really interesting. It turned out that David was not only good at pleasing the elderly but also great with kids. Emily joined the conversation with Lily. Before they knew it, Lily had forgotten that she was originally going to call her dad and her friend. She just kept talking to Emily and Uncle David. Finally, when they were about to hang up, Emily asked Lily, "Do you miss Aunt Emily?" Lily was always a sweet-talking kid. She nodded immediately. "Yes, I do. A few days ago, Emily and David had discussed renting a piece of land on a farm and growing some organic vegetables. After receiving the video call from Lily today, they went to Tom's house and picked Lily up. The next day, they took Lily to the countryside farm. Tom and his wife were still in the UK. They only knew that Lily was being taken to play by Emily and David, but they didn't know that David was taking Lily to work on the farm. That night, before going to bed, Tom and his wife saw David's post on Facebook. In the photo, Lily was wearing a farmer's hat, holding a carrot in her hand. looking very serious while pulling the carrot. The caption was, "Pain is not truly pain. And joy is not truly joy. Everything changes with one's mindset, and the environment is created by the heart." At the same time, Emily also posted on Facebook. Her caption was much simpler. Just, "Hard work is rewarding," seeing their daughter in the photos on their friends' Facebook feeds. Tom's wife thought, "When we get back, we can also take Lily to more activities like this," Tom thought. David actually dared to take his daughter to farm. Lily herself. "Pull the carrot. Pull the carrot." "I can't pull it." "Oh no." Emily and David took care of Lily for 2 days until Tom and his wife returned from the UK and picked up their daughter. When they left, Lily said goodbye to Uncle David reluctantly. "Uncle David, goodbye." David was holding a big bag filled with organic carrots and cabbages from the farm. He handed it to Tom personally. "Tom, here you go." Tom didn't really want to take it, David added. "There's a carrot that Lily pulled out herself." Tom reached out and took the bag, next to them. Tom's wife smiled softly. Lily raised her head proudly and said to Tom, "I pulled out 2 carrots. One is for Uncle David, and the other is for Dad." When his daughter said that, Tom thought the carrots and cabbages in his hands were much more precious. But what made Tom unhappy was that in just 2 days, David had influenced Lily. For example, when Lily was sitting on the couch watching cartoons at night, she suddenly put her hands together. Tom asked her what she was doing. Lily didn't really know. She just gave an answer she knew. Making a wish. Needless to say, Tom knew exactly who Lily learned this from. Tom thought David hadn't completely adapted to the secular life. Since he had left the monastery, he still had a lot of monastic habits. And even his current job was related to religious studies. David had his own reasons. Otherwise, what did people think? That his time in the monastery and his leaving were just jokes. Emily could accept this. The only thing that worried her was how to tell her parents about David's past, although her parents were very satisfied with David when they met him last time. If they were going to get married, she had to tell them the truth, but how? Their future son-in-law was a former monk. Their town was small. If any of their relatives found out the truth and said something, it might reach Emily's ex-husband's family, and they might say something nasty. Besides, her parents were very concerned about their reputation. They might even try to break them up. Anyway, Emily was clear-minded. She thought that if there were problems, they should solve them. If there were no problems, they should just be happy together and ignore the gossip. So what if David had been a monk? Even if he had been a eunuch, he was still better than her ex-husband. Emily blurted out these words in bed. David smiled helplessly and modestly, chanting, "Goodness gracious," twice. After a pause, he added with a twinkle in his eyes, "My dear, thank you for your compliment. I'm really touched." Emily. David seemed to have misunderstood her words. Some people really had a dirty mind. Even being a monk couldn't change that. Anyway, they really needed to tell her parents about David's past. David also didn't want Emily to be with him without her parents' full understanding. He didn't want to do anything that would disgrace his former monastery. The monastery would probably say, "Since you've left, stop talking nonsense." After discussing, Emily went back to her hometown first. When her parents saw that Emily came back alone without David, they were inevitably disappointed. They asked Emily why, but she just sighed and didn't say anything. "Did that David dump you?" Emily's mother asked. Emily shook her head. "No way." "Then why didn't you say he would come to visit us this time? If not, what else could it be except that Emily was dumped? Surely their daughter didn't dump David, right?" Emily's father was also worried. "Honey, tell us." Emily took a deep breath. "Yes. I dumped him. I think he's not good enough for me." "What? What the heck? What's going on?" Emily's parents opened their mouths wide, unable to believe it. Yes, their daughter was great, but was she misjudging herself? David was such an excellent and charming man. How could he not be good enough for their daughter? Was there something she wasn't telling them? Yeah. Emily nodded. Emily's parents' first thought was something else. After thinking for a while, they asked tactfully, "Is there something wrong with his physical or mental health?" Emily's parents lived in a small coastal town. Their thoughts were relatively open-minded. Soon, Emily's mother thought of another possibility. She widened her eyes and said, "Could he be a gay man pretending to be straight and getting married?" Gay. Emily almost spat out her hot tea. Well, she told them the truth. She said that she and David were college classmates. Later, David went to a monastery in the mountains for a few years for personal reasons. The reason he left the monastery was that she kept looking for him. So what? Emily's parents finally understood. They both let out a sigh of relief. It was just that he had been a monk. It didn't seem that hard to accept. And according to their daughter, David left the monastery because of her. So in the end, it was all because of their daughter. Daughter, then why do you think David is not good enough for you? Emily's mother asked. In fact, she was already very satisfied with David. What was wrong with a man who had been a monk? He was calm, kind-hearted, and wise. Emily explained a lot. Her reason was that she was afraid David's past as a monk would affect their family's reputation. Emily's parents. Our family doesn't have any reputation to be affected. I mean, how could David affect our family's reputation? The most important thing is that you really like each other. Everything else is secondary. Emily's mother, as an experienced person, saw things comprehensively. Emily was so touched that she almost cried. Emily's mother added, besides, you made him leave the monastery. If you don't want him now, even God will punish you. Emily. She looked at her father, and to her surprise, her usually serious father agreed with her mother. Your mother is right. Our family has always been honest. We can't play with a former monk like that. Right. As the saying goes, it's easy to invite someone but hard to send them away. To avoid being punished by God, Emily sent David good news that night. David replied with, goodness gracious. God bless. God bless my foot. Her parents were just as shallow as she was, liking good-looking people. David was so good-looking. What's more, her mother's favorite actor since she was a child was the one who played Jesus in a movie. Emily's note for David on her phone was the name Lily used to call him, with my added in front. It was my David. The next day, David came to Emily's hometown from the city. As for his past as a monk, don't underestimate Emily's parents' ability to make up stories. When they told their close family members like grandparents, they said, David had a special constitution since he was a child. He was guided by a wise man and had to spend a few years in a monastery for spiritual cultivation after reaching adulthood. He could only consider getting married after his cultivation was over. Finally, David's cultivation was over, and he was ready to get married after going through so much. Their daughter had finally found the right person. So, this was fate. After saying that, they even took out the piece of paper with perfect match written on it and said, look. This fortune teller named Master John said it's a great match. Well, it seemed that Emily still hadn't told her parents about David's former religious name. What was it like to marry a former monk? Every morning when she opened her eyes, it felt like an angel was lying next to her. When she made a mistake, she really wanted to kneel down and beg for forgiveness. And everything could be solved with a simple, goodness gracious. If that didn't work, just add another one. What was it like to have a young-looking mother-in-law? They called each other sisters when they went shopping. What was it like to marry into the wealthy family of the Big B department store? There were so many wonderful goods and delicious foods, but she had to eat a vegetarian diet every day. These were Emily and David's daily feelings after they really entered married life. It wasn't Emily's first marriage, but it was really rare for her to be lucky enough to marry a former monk who almost became a religious master, since her friend Nina's fairy tale book was published and on the market. Emily took some time to record her married life. Maybe one day she could write a book. She had already thought of a title, 100 Love Letters to My Master. When it was published, her husband David could write a preface for her, and she could ask Nina to draw some cute illustrations. Then she could easily become an author. It would be so great. Unexpectedly, just a few minutes into her daydream, David interrupted her. He gave her a look that was both kind and helpless, and said, Emily, don't be silly. What Emily couldn't stand the most was David's look. There was kindness in it, along with affection and indulgence. His gentle voice and slow-paced speech made it seem like even though he had hair now, there was still a holy aura around him. But what did she do wrong? There were so many people publishing books to show off their love. She wasn't the only one. Maybe the title she chose wasn't good enough. What about Love with Compassion? Moi, or You're the Only Love in My Peaceful World, or Turn Back from the Boundless Sea of Sorrow to Love, and so on. Of course. Emily also thought these titles were a bit cheesy. Finally, David shook his head and placed his palm on top of Emily's head. Emily, I mean, I've already stepped out of my comfort zone. If we publish a book, my former monk friends might really scold me. Emily. Okay, she didn't expect that David still cared a little about his past identity. She realized that she had been too careless about some things. Honey, if one day you want to go back to being a monk, just go. It's okay. Don't worry about me. Emily suddenly said these words. This generous and calm attitude was not like her usual self. Cough. David, who was always good at understanding people's minds, was a bit confused by his wife's words. After thinking for a while, he felt that he had overthought things that he subconsciously said, goodness gracious. But in his heart, he was really happy. Emily's words and thoughts showed that she really loved him. In the 3rd year of his monastic life, David truly felt that he loved Buddhism and Buddhism loved him. It was a kind of great love, a kind of liberation as well as a kind of restriction. Now he thought that the small loves in the human world were more flavorful. Although human love was more reserved, it was also more inclusive. Since he had left the monastery, why would he go back? Besides, there were 2 marriage certificates lying in the drawer. Looking back, it was really easy for David to pass the test of Emily's parents, even though they knew about his spiritual cultivation experience. When choosing a son-in-law, the most important things were still appearance and bearing. Oh my God. After all, the example of Emily's ex-husband made them no longer care about the traditional idea that both parents of the groom should be alive. However, they didn't expect that their monk son-in-law had such an amazing family background. Just that he only had one parent left, and the relationship between his father and David wasn't very good. But they didn't care too much about these things. The most important thing in life was to get along well and be happy. Families that were too picky, like Emily's ex-husband's family, well, just forget it. So, with this easygoing attitude, Emily and David quickly got their marriage certificates. Since David was a former master, they didn't even need to ask others to choose an auspicious day. They could handle everything on their own. In a place like Emily's hometown, when it came to getting married, people often paid attention to the man's job. After all, a man's job could bring certain conveniences. For example, doctors, teachers in key schools, or civil servants in good departments. But in reality, Emily found that David's identity as a former master was really useful. For example, he could help relatives and friends choose a good day for moving. And although we can't talk about feng shui in the Western context, we can say he could give advice on home environment. He could also check people's health by feeling their pulses. In short, her family members really liked David. Especially her little nephew wrote in his composition about what he wanted to be when he grew up that he wanted to be a great religious figure, who could choose good days, give advice on home environment and check people's health. Cough. The teacher's comment below was, God bless. Look how much influence David had on her family. In fact, Emily didn't know that she also had a great influence on David's family. After she married David, the relationship between David and his father improved a bit. The first improvement was when David needed to find support for his friend Tom through his family connections. The second improvement was that Emily established a good relationship with her future mother-in-law. Her future mother-in-law was 46 years old. She had been dating David's father for several years. Because of some strange things in David's family before, she hadn't married David's father yet. Of course, this was just Emily's guess, although David's future mother-in-law was 46. She took great care of herself and looked like she was in her early 30s. When they went out together, no one could tell they were mother-in-law and daughter-in-law, so they just became good friends. Well, but in Emily's heart, her best friend was always Nina. Nina, Nina, Nina. Could you stop saying that all the time? So one day, Nina had a book signing event with the publisher. Emily, who was Nina's partner, agent, good friend, and roommate, became the all-around assistant who helped turn the books at the event. She turned the books, and Nina signed them. They worked well together. The scene was noisy, and the atmosphere was really lively. The whole place was full of primary school students. Next to them, the host was holding a microphone and arranging the order of the line. Older brothers and sisters, please stand on the left. Younger children, stand on the right. Older kids, please take care of the younger ones. Parents, Please take good care of your children. Everyone, come one by one. Don't rush. Nina, Emily. They didn't expect that Nina's fairy tale book was so popular among primary school students. Backstage at the book signing event, Tom and David were sitting in the air-conditioned room, drinking Darjeeling tea and discussing whether it was more tiring to keep signing books or to keep turning books, which meant they were discussing which of their girlfriends had it harder. Every word was filled with love and concern. However, if Nina and Emily knew what Tom and David were discussing, they would probably both think, "Oh, come on." At the book signing event, Lily, of course, came too. She was leaning against her father's knee, listening to her father and David's conversation. And giggling. She thought Nina was the one who had it harder because writing was really tiring. Yeah, right. Signing was really tiring. When Abby found out that her husband, Dr. Smith, had an online friend, she was really shocked. Her husband was amazing. He actually had an online friend. She thought only someone like her, whose online ID used to be Genius Abby, would make online friends. She never expected that Dr. Smith also had such an active online life. Seeing his wife's teasing expression, Dr. Smith didn't explain how he made this online friend for the time being. At the same time, Abby learned from Dr. Smith that this online friend had been a monk before and was quite high-ranking in the monastic world. For example, he had the title of Master and even published an autobiography. What's more, she hadn't even published an autobiography yet. After a while of being shocked, Abby finally spoke. So, which monastery is he in now? She thought that if she had the chance, she would go with Dr. Smith to visit this master at his monastery. Because of her strange state of mind, Abby's expression and tone carried a bit of strange respect. But Dr. Smith was so annoying. He deliberately ignored her complex speculations and just continued to state the facts. He's probably left the monastic life now. Abby. Oh. She pretended to be calm and nodded. Leaving the monastic life was great. Then he could eat meat. Abby thought that this master who returned to the secular world might be a really interesting person. Still, she was curious and asked, why did the master leave the monastic life? In her heart, Abby already had her own guess. There were so many fun things in the world. Maybe a rich young man became a monk just to experience life. As a doctor, Dr. Smith didn't like to make assumptions easily. He preferred to state the facts. So he said casually, by the way, he's getting married soon. Getting married? A former monk getting married? What a piece of shocking news. Abby had been eating cookies while listening to the gossip. She almost spat out the cookie in her mouth. Her eyes widened as she looked at Dr. Smith, with a look of expectation. Hoping he would say more, cough. This was exactly the reaction Dr. Smith wanted. After all, he knew that his wife Abby loved these kinds of interesting stories. He only told Abby about David's marriage after learning that David had left the monastic life and was getting married. As for how he and David met online, they added each other's contact information when discussing questions on a forum years ago. But Dr. Smith was mostly in the United States, and David went to a mountain monastery to study, even though they had some similar views and angles when discussing questions online. They had never met in person. After that, David added him on WeChat. When David became a monk, he sent a group photo of himself getting tonsured. Abby asked Dr. Smith, when you knew your male friend became a monk, were you sad or admiring? Dr. Smith sneered. In fact, he didn't feel much, since they were just online friends. He just took a few casual glances at the photo. He neither felt sad nor admiring. Everyone who became a monk had their own reasons for retreating from the world. As for David's reason, since they had interacted before, Dr. Smith thought David became a monk just out of boredom. Boredom-driven monkhood. Abby had heard of being bored and picking one's toes, but she never expected someone to become a monk out of boredom. People really had different ways of thinking. Looking at the tonsuring photo, Abby suddenly had an idea and asked Dr. Smith, Dr. Smith, did Master David send you this photo hoping you would persuade him not to become a monk? Also, was it really a group photo? Maybe he only sent it to Dr. Smith. Abby's imagination ran wild. She had already come up with a cheesy love story where one person's feelings were not reciprocated. She thought that Dr. Smith's indifference made a promising young man become a monk. But in the end, he sent the photo to the person he loved. hoping to be persuaded to stay. Abby couldn't control her thoughts. She was completely immersed in this dramatic love story. Finally, she glanced at Dr. Smith with a mixture of blame and relief. "Did you reply to Master David?" Dr. Smith. "I did," replied. "Ah, if he replied, why did Master David still become a monk?" "What did he reply?" "Well, 2 words. Congratulations, Abby." Poor Master David. Dr. Smith didn't know that his wife had gotten lost in the male CP story of him and Master David, until Abby continued to ask if they had kept in touch. After David became Master David, he still talked to Dr. Smith about some questions because he thought they had similar IQs and EQs and could communicate without any problems. "Dr. Smith, I think you're a person with great wisdom, unlike my friend Tom, who has no religious sense at all." This was David's comment on Dr. Smith. Dr. Smith didn't feel proud of this compliment at all. After entering medical school, his study and work got busier and busier. David was probably just going through the motions of being a monk. After that, they didn't communicate much. Why didn't they communicate? Abby looked at Dr. Smith. After a pause, she took back her slightly regretful look. Fortunately, they didn't communicate much. Otherwise, she might not have met Dr. Smith but a Master Smith instead. Or some other master. Dr. Smith glanced at Abby. The reason they stopped communicating was that men usually talked about things. When there was nothing in common to talk about, they naturally stopped contacting each other. Well, then what did they talk about before? Abby was curious again. What could a doctor and a monk talk about? Dr. Smith explained calmly. "Our research subjects are both people, Abby." Well, her research subject was also people. Then what? Then, some time ago, David sent him a photo of himself in a suit and told him he was getting married. "Did you reply?" "I did." Abby pursed her lips. Pretty sure she knew what Dr. Smith had replied. That it must be the 2 words. Congratulations. Obviously, it was a happy event. But why did she feel a faint sense of sadness? At the same time, there was a hint of excitement in her heart. After all, the couple of the scoundrel doctor and the passionate master was really exciting, wasn't it? "So, are you going to attend the wedding?" Abby suddenly asked Dr. Smith, raising her eyebrows. Dr. Smith said, "I don't think it's necessary to attend in person." "It's necessary. It's really necessary." Abby grabbed Dr. Smith's arm. "I think it's very necessary." Dr. Smith was confused. Abby thought she wanted to see that passionate master, and also see the poor bride-to-be who might not know the whole truth. Dr. Smith really didn't know that Abby had such a rich imagination. He just thought Abby wanted to join in the fun. However, he and David weren't really close enough to attend the wedding in person. But looking at Abby's eager face, he nodded. "I'll make a call." Abby felt a bit mean, but all her meanness came from her silly ideas. In fact, she just wanted to attend the master's wedding. After learning the master's former religious name, she found out that Master David even had a Twitter account, but his last tweet was from last Christmas. True happiness lies in coming back to the real world. Well, she thought too much. It seemed that it had nothing to do with Dr. Smith, however. Being able to attend the wedding of such an interesting former master made Abby feel honored and excited. So much so that when she was having dinner with her brother, Jack, Abby shared this as a topic of conversation. "By the way, in a few days, Dr. Smith and I are going to attend a wedding in City A. Hee. Oh, in a few days. The son of one of my business partners is getting married too, but I'm too busy to go. My assistant will go instead." Humph. Someone with the title of general manager was really busy. Abby pouted. The weddings of rich kids are really nothing special. But the wedding Dr. Smith and I are going to is different. Jack didn't bother to argue with Abby's sarcasm and continued to drink his soup. Suddenly, he thought of something, looked up at Abby, who was looking excited and eager to talk, and asked, "Are you going to attend the wedding of some big shot?" "Not really a big shot, but more interesting than a big shot. He's someone even the big shots would respect. Not really a big deal. He's a master." Jack. Boring. After a pause, Jack reacted and asked, Is he the kind of master who used to be a monk? Ah, Abby blinked. She had a strange feeling that she hoped it wasn't the case. Jack continued. The son of the business partner who invited me to the wedding used to be a monk for a few years. Abby. Jack. He left the monastic life last year. Abby. Jack. I think we're probably going to the same person's wedding. Yeah, the amazing master you just mentioned. Abby. On December 25th. Abby. Dr. Smith. Jack. And Shania went to Master David's wedding together. It was noisy, really noisy. In fact, the more luxurious and tasteful a wedding reception was, the quieter it usually was, even when it was full of guests. Everyone would gather in an atmosphere that was both elegant and festive, admiring the handsome groom and the beautiful bride on the stage. Question. What was an atmosphere with a certain feeling? Well, generally speaking, it was an atmosphere that was elegant with a touch of festivity, festive with a hint of romance, and romance with the smell of money. In short, when you walked into the venue, you could feel the money being spent. Just like the wedding of Shishi and he Lloyd in Don't Be So Arrogant. Shishi asked the author. So, is my wedding with he Lloyd the most luxurious and grand wedding you've written? Other authors have written about weddings in outer space that are out of this world. Hee. Those authors write science fiction. There's also the male lead who proposed to the female lead by launching a satellite. Speechless. He Lloyd. Can you take your over-the-top wife away? He Lloyd. She. Come here. Don't disturb the author. Author. The male and female leads are showing off their love right in front of the author. Believe it or not. I'll write Arrogant, Part 3. And She He Lloyd. Compared to some protagonists' weddings, Emily and David's wedding reception was relatively simple and low-key. Emily. Is it because we're supporting characters? No. Definitely not. It's because your husband has a special identity. Okay. This was the first time the author, Daju, had written about the wedding of a former master. She was really worried about overdoing it, but Emily's parents said that no matter what, they couldn't lose. Lose? To whom? Naturally. It was compared to Emily's first wedding. Although it was an arranged marriage by both families in a modern way, the wedding was quite grand. However, Emily felt that she had really grown up and understood what marriage meant to her, so she didn't care much about the form of the wedding, which was just a ceremony, but deep down, she still wanted to have a wedding with David. That's why she and David got married and also held a wedding reception. In fact, Emily felt a bit embarrassed to accept the money from Nina and the others for the second time, unlike David, who could handle any embarrassing situation with a simple, goodness gracious. A divorced woman and a former master. That's why this wedding attracted so much attention. As for why it was noisy, it wasn't because of the loud rock music or the continuous laughter of the guests. It was because of the gossipy minds of the onlookers at the big round tables. The guests couldn't contain their gossipy hearts. Their curious glances towards the bride and groom met in the air. Most of the guests were from the bride's side. Remarrying into a wealthy family after divorce was rare but could often be seen in TV dramas. But remarrying a former monk, the ordinary people like them couldn't even imagine such a thing. They never expected their Emily could be so amazing. Because the Davids family was low-key and didn't have many relatives. Most of the guests at the wedding reception were from Emily's side. The people David invited were mostly important guests like Jack, who had long-term business relationships with his family. Because there were so many guests from Emily's side, guests like Nina and Tom, who knew both the bride and the groom, were arranged at the groom's tables, because of fate. Roll eyes. Actually it was the author's deliberate arrangement. Abby, Dr. Smith, Jack, and Shania were at one table. Tom, Nina, Lily, Tom's older brother, and Man were at the table right in front of them. Abby and Lily had become friends when they played at the tea house. When they met again at the wedding reception, Lily, who was wearing a flower girl dress, accidentally bumped into Abby. Abby looked down and opened her mouth in surprise. This little girl looked familiar. After thinking for a while, her mind went blank, and she couldn't remember the little girl's name for a moment. Similarly, Lily opened her mouth in a small O shape, then blinked her eyes and looked up at Abby with a face full of excitement. A mixture of anticipation and shyness. She wondered if the pretty sister could recognize her. Lily. Abby finally remembered the name. Yeah. Lily nodded, but she had forgotten the sister's name. Abby, Dr. Smith came up from behind, put his arm around his wife's shoulder, and looked down at the familiar little girl with a gentle smile. Did you meet a friend? Abby could tell the teasing in Dr. Smith's words. She said to Dr. Smith, we met at the tea house before. Dr. Smith had a better memory than Abby and naturally remembered where he had seen the little girl, not far away. Jack was so bored that he tugged at his tie. He looked at Abby and Dr. Smith talking to the little girl and couldn't help asking Shania beside him. Look at them. They're so bored that they're talking to a kid. Shania was pregnant and looked gentle and beautiful. She looked at Jack and asked, don't you think you're even more bored? Jack raised his chin. Me, bored. In fact, he was really bored to come to this so-called master's wedding. He had expected to see something different, like a bald groom or a group of monks chanting scriptures. But in fact, today's wedding reception was not much different from the ones he had attended before. However, the bride talked a lot. At other weddings, the brides were usually reserved, elegant, and beautiful. But this Emily seemed to want to replace the MC. She talked so much that she almost took over the whole event. However, although she talked a lot, what she said was quite touching. Especially when she expressed her understanding of happiness in life. Jack thought that the master and his new wife seemed to have the potential to be in a pyramid scheme. At the wedding reception, Jack was very well behaved and showed his gentlemanly manner, because he was going to be a father soon. As Abby said, saying nice things is a kind of good deed. Well, his nice words today were that he hoped this unique couple could have a baby soon and live a happy and fulfilling life. However, at another table, Tom still couldn't hold back his sharp tongue. It feels like we're watching the Spring Festival Gala. Nina. Did Emily say all the MC's lines? Nina. Are they performing a crosstalk? Nina. Fortunately, David controlled the situation. If he had chanted scriptures again. Nina. Tom. Please shut up. Okay. Tom turned his head arrogantly but obediently closed his mouth. A sharp tongue really needed to be tamed. Not far from the groom's guests, there were two special tables. Not only were the dishes on these tables different, but the guests sitting around the round tables also had a different vibe. They were all bald, they all had a calm and serene aura. Looking otherworldly, they were all wearing the simplest and plainest linen clothes. They were David's former colleagues, monks who had worked in the same monastery with him. Abby brought a professional camera with her. She took pictures of this extraordinary wedding and also took some close-ups of the unusual guests, like that group of monks. Of course. She also took pictures of the people she loved. Dr. Smith was used to her taking pictures, but her brother, Jack, could never get rid of his haughty attitude. Whenever the camera was pointed at him, he would give Abby a fierce look. Abby didn't care and continued taking pictures as she pleased, until the wedding reception started giving out Dolly dolls. It was a very popular doll brand in recent years. Abby didn't know that the designer of the Dolly dolls was Lily's mother, the gentle and lovely woman at the next table. However, maybe because of the imposing aura of Jack and Dr. Smith, it seemed like there was an invisible barrier around their table. No matter how much Abby waved her hands, the dolls couldn't reach her. Shania was pregnant and couldn't stand up and wave to get the dolls either. Disappointed, Abby sat down with a huff and didn't want to talk to Dr. Smith. It was all because of him and his brother. Their presence made their table seem older. And the MC probably thought they didn't need the dolls. Dr. Smith had no idea that his age had offended his wife, until the MC started the game session. Abby looked at Dr. Smith again. Dr. Smith blinked nervously but still stood up consciously. Jack showed his usual disdain for Dr. Smith's doting behavior towards Abby. Are you crazy? Then, Abby looked at her brother. Brother, do you want to go up too and increase our chances of winning? Jack snorted. No way. I'm not crazy. You want me to go up and play games? Dream on. Just then, Shania looked at Jack and said softly, that sheep doll is so cute. Jack didn't know how he ended up on the stage, but his stage presence was steady, just as steady as Dr. Smith's, equally shameless, equally calm and thick-skinned. However, Jack really wasn't good at games. In fact, it was because he still had the airs of a general manager and was too concerned about his image. He was quickly eliminated. Abby really admired Dr. Smith. He had a handsome face like an idol but had no idol-like pretensions. Of course, without the idol-like pretensions, Dr. Smith looked so cool, even when playing childish games. He was calm and incredibly witty. Dr. Smith became the final winner on the stage and won the doll that Abby wanted the most. The MC on the stage asked Dr. Smith a common question. So, are you a guest of the bride or the groom? Dr. Smith replied, the groom. The MC continued, and what's your relationship with the groom? Dr. Smith said, a friend. In fact, they were just online friends, commonly known as internet friends. Were you friends in school? The MC seemed very interested in Dr. Smith and kept asking about his identity. Dr. Smith could only give a general answer. No, we met after I started working. Then the MC showed a knowing look. Dr. Smith nodded and stepped off the stage. Even the smart Dr. Smith couldn't figure out the MC's strange look at the end. Abby, who was already overjoyed by Dr. Smith's victory, didn't start gossiping and imagining that her husband might be given a different identity by others. Even she, sitting next to Dr. Smith, was the subject of all kinds of speculations. People's imaginations were always rich, but most of them were reserved in public and gossiped behind people's backs, especially about those they didn't know well. However, it was different if they were like-minded people. After the wedding reception, Dr. Smith and Abby were stopped by a man with an elegant and somewhat unusual air. Excuse me, Mr. Smith. Dr. Smith nodded. Abby stood up straight next to Dr. Smith, excitedly took his arm, and faced the man in the linen clothes. She could tell without looking that the man was a religious person. May I ask which monastery you used to work at? The man asked Dr. Smith directly. Dr. Smith. Abby. What the hell? What was going on? I'm sorry. I've never worked at any monastery. I'm a doctor. Oh, I'm so sorry. I was wrong. The man apologized quickly but still didn't let it go. He added, I saw your extraordinary aura on the stage just now and thought you were one of us. Dr. Smith. His face darkened. Even the good-tempered Dr. Smith was annoyed. But Abby burst out laughing. When she first met Dr. Smith, she also felt that he had a special, almost otherworldly aura. What was this otherworldly aura? It was hard for her to describe what it was like for a man with such an aura to live in the real world. Until she attended Master David's wedding, she understood. Amen. So all these misunderstandings weren't without reason. Dr. Smith was misunderstood. And naturally, Abby was too. Until the end of the wedding reception, the bride's relatives looked at her in a way similar to how they looked at the bride, Emily. It was as if she was also some amazing seductress.